Good morning, Leslie. Thank you for doing this. I'm going to open with two quick football questions. First, I mean, as we've talked many times, you led the NFL last year in fewest 20-plus passes and fewest 40-plus passes allowed. Would you like to do that again this year?
Oh, absolutely, Mark. We'd love to be able to do that again. That's a big part of having success on defense in our league, not giving up explosive passes. It's such a big deal for offenses to be able to get explosives, and on defense, you're trying to prevent them. So, yes, we would definitely want to achieve that goal again.
And then lastly, just very, you don't have to go on about this, but briefly, just what do you like from what you see so far from two guys, Mario, Addison off the edge, and Quentin Jefferson?
Yeah, I really like the energy that Mario brings. I mean, he's a well-accomplished player in our league, being able to rush the passer, and he has some leadership qualities as well. I mean, that part I didn't really know about, but I've seen that in his play and his demeanor as well. And then with Quentin, just the toughness that he brings to our defense, a fiery guy who is ready to get after it from the time he gets off the bus. So, you like that edge that he brings to the defense.
Thank you very much.
Coach Frazier, good morning. Mookie Hawkins, 1-4 Sports 1080. How you doing, sir?
Good morning. Doing fine.
I'm good. Now, being born and raised in the South and, Mississippi, how do you keep your players focused at a time like this?
Well, this is not an easy time to be focused. No matter who you are in the United States, it's a challenging time. But our guys are really trying to do their jobs and stay committed to what we're trying to get accomplished each and every day. And they really handle things extremely well. And hopefully we can stay focused on what we have to get done, but you can't ignore, what's going on in our country. We're not putting our head in the sand and pretending like the world is not going on. We're well aware of what's happening. But at the same time, once we walk into this building, we know we have a job to do, and we have to focus and concentrate on what we have to get done.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to chime in on yesterday's scrimmage, how impressed were you of your defense yesterday?
Yeah, our ones did a really good job, and those are the guys you're trying to get ready for September 13th. Really pleased with the way that they performed and how hard they worked. We've got a lot of work to do leading up to September 13th, but you can see that some of the things we've been working on, they're helping us to come together as a group. You can see the chemistry and the camaraderie we've been trying to build because we were so separate for so long, just trying to come together and be unified. So that was encouraging. And we just got to keep building on a few little things, and we should be ready to go by the time we get to September 13th.
Yes, sir. Appreciate the time, and good luck.
Thank you.
Hi, Coach. Sal Capaccio, WGR. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well.
Good morning, Sal. Thank you.
You have a very versatile defensive line. Obviously, we know that from the guys you brought in. Some, they've played inside, they played outside, 3-4, 4-3, things like that. As a defensive coordinator, how nice is that you can have a playbook to do things, but also just as a general philosophy, do you have to be careful sometimes not to kind of overdo it and just kind of stick with what you do best, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a great point. You can have all these toys that you can play with, but man, you got to find something you can be good at. And we have some things that we've been pretty good at in the past, and if you want to add a few wrinkles, you want to do that, but you don't get away from what has helped you to be successful. And we're fortunate to have the flexibility in our line that you mentioned, but at the same time, we have some tenets that we believe in, and we want to make sure that we're good at those and maybe add a few wrinkles here and there.
Thanks, Coach. Always appreciate your time.
Thanks, Sam.
Hey, Coach Frazier, what have you learned about your defense through this training camp so far?
Good morning, Maddie. It's every day has been a day of learning where things are not normal, as we all know. So every time you come in the building, every time you walk on the practice field, you're getting a few nuggets along the way. And one of the things that sticks out to me about our group, we needed to find out who our leaders were going to be going into this season. And as I mentioned earlier to Mark, just seeing Mario Addison step up and provide some leadership for us. Losing Lorenzo, as you know, Matty, that was a big piece from a leadership standpoint. And that was one of the things that's been going through my mind. Who's going to help fill that void and that absence of a guy like Lorenzo? similar to what happened when Kyle retired. And so having Jerry Hughes along with Mario and seeing how Tremaine has really matured in that role, that's probably been the thing that I've been learning about our defense as much as the X's and O's. Because that's a big deal. Where's your leadership going to come from? It can't always come from coaches. Because when you're in the heat of the battle and you're on that field, you need somebody to take charge. And so to see what Mario brings, to see what Tremaine is doing, to take a look at what Jerry Hughes is doing, that's been really encouraging, along with Micah and Jordan Poyer as well.
Do you think that leadership between Mario and Jerry is even bigger because of that connection they had previously to the Bills, playing at the Colts together?
Yeah, that may have something to do with it, their history. That's possible, but I also think it's because of who they are as people. I think that's got a big part of it as well.
Thanks, Coach.
You're welcome.
Hey, Leslie, John Scott. Good morning.
Good morning, John.
Wanted to ask you, how big of a swing has Josh Norman's injury been to that competition between him and Levi Wallace?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the tough ones there because John, we were really looking forward to those competitive practices between those two, and really felt like that would really be good for our defense to have that competition going day in and day out. And with Josh's injury, that's kind of been put on the shelf for now, and hopefully we'll get him back, prior to the Jets game and plenty enough time to get some practice in. But Levi's doing a really good job, and if Josh doesn't make it back, we feel very confident that Levi can do the job. But we're going to have to make a decision whenever Josh comes back. One of those guys will have to start. Unfortunately, you don't get the reps with Josh to really evaluate him properly.
And then from a defensive coordinator standpoint, us in the stands, we saw Josh yesterday, and he looked to be dealing. I understand it was against the second team. But even when he's going up against the ones in practice, from your spot as a defensive coordinator, how have you seen him grow, and how is he different this camp than you've seen the previous 2 years?
The thing that I noticed, and I was asked this yesterday in one of our staff meetings, the thing that I've noticed is the decision-making. It's what you thought it would be going to his third season. He's grown so much in that area, protecting the football and making good decisions, whether to take the ball down the field or take a check down, or should I throw it away versus taking a sack. I mean, that's a big part of quarterback play. And we're trying so hard on defense to create negative plays, and he's making good decisions, which makes it hard for us to create negative plays. So that's one of the things I've seen from a growth standpoint, and kudos to him and the offensive coaching staff.
Thanks a lot, Leslie.
You're welcome.
Hey, good morning, Leslie. How you doing?
Good morning, Marcel.
Just kind of going off your previous comments, yesterday as we're in the wake of the NBA players going on strike, MLB players on strike, several NFL teams deciding not to practice. How difficult of a decision was it for you and your team, you and your staff, to still take the field yesterday morning and continue with practice?
Yeah, I think Sean did a great job the night before our scrimmage in allowing a forum for our players to voice their thoughts and opinions about what's going on in our world. And it was just, I thought, really great for us and very, very powerful as well. And so when it came time to practice, because of some of the conversation from the night before, I think it was a lot easier to go on that field for that couple of hours and really focus on what we had to get done. But the night before really set the table for what happened the next day.
Gotcha. I appreciate you, Leslie.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Leslie. Matt Fairburn here. I'm curious, you talk a lot about replacing Lorenzo's leadership, which is a big part of it, but he was also a pretty significant pass rushing piece for you. How much, how do you kind of replace that, and how much do the linebackers that you have kind of play a role in filling that void that Lorenzo leaves?
No, you're absolutely right, Matt. Lorenzo was more than just a leader in the locker room, but his play, and that also emboldened his leadership. He made a ton of plays for us. So to replace that, bringing in a guy like A.J. Klein, who will help us in that area from a pass rush standpoint, seeing some of the things that Mario Addison can bring to the table. Hopefully he can help us from a production standpoint in that area. And that's how we'll try to do it. You know, the combination of some of the people we brought in to fill that void that we're losing with Lorenzo. And hopefully we'll get the production out of both of those positions. He was one of those guys who was multifaceted for us. On the line of scrimmage, he could play off the ball, and those guys are rare, but he provided a lot for our defense.
I know you talked about last year, towards the end of the year, you know, Tremaine and Matt having a little bit more of a role as blitzers. I mean, how do you balance? Those guys might be two of the best cover linebackers in the league, but they're also explosive athletes. So how do you balance knowing when to deploy them in that way, knowing that it takes a little bit away from your coverage?
Yeah, you know, you have to pick your spots. You know, people can get a beat on you if you're doing one or the other, you know, the majority of the time. So you have to counterbalance it. I mean, they are excellent blitzers for sure, and they're very good pass coverage guys, which is a rarity in our league. I mean, that's what you want in your linebackers, and we're fortunate to have that in both of those guys. So you kind of balance it, and just depending on how the game is going and what the game plan is, that probably determines how much they're going to pressure versus how much they're going to cover.
Thanks, Leslie.
You're welcome.
Hey, Leslie, Matt Perino, good to see you. I just was interested in your, you know, early camp impressions of Bashan Joseph and how you think he's performed, not only in training camp, but all off season to kind of get up to speed after missing last year.
Yeah, Bashan has, you know, really been working hard, Matt, and trying to get to where he needs to be to help us as a backup linebacker. And he had a little bit of a setback a few days ago, had an injury that set him back a little bit, but he's making progress. He just needs to be on the field. Missing that entire first year, he needs to reps. And so hopefully he can stay healthy, stay on the field, because he's got the talent, but he needs to be on the field to really grow as a player. And, you know, we all got our fingers crossed, hoping that'll be the case over the next few days.
How versatile is Tyrell Dodson? Because I remember talking to Julian Stanford last year, and him saying his eyes kind of popped, like this dude already knows so much about all these different positions. He was really impressed with him. So how has he been doing, and just what does he bring in terms of the versatility?
Terrell has really done a good job for us. He's been a backup Mike for us, but he does have the ability to play the outside linebacker spots as well. And his strength is probably how smart he is as a player. He really, like was mentioned, he really had a grasp of our defense early on. And to see the growth in his game has been a plus for us. You know, it's tough when you miss those guys the entire off season and you wonder where they're going to be, but Terrell hasn't missed a beat. He's done a terrific job, and he does have some flexibility, so we'll see how it plays out in the next few days.
Thanks, Leslie.
You're welcome.
Hey, Leslie, Sal Majorana over in Rochester. Good to see you.
Say, Sal.
I got a couple things for you. First, going back to Matt Milano, how impressive you've been. This is a 5th-round pick that I'm not sure what you guys expected when you made that pick, but what he's become. Just if you could maybe pinpoint a couple of things that really stuck out in his development to get him to where he is today.
The first thing that comes to mind, Sal, is hard work. You know, when he came out of college, he was bothered by hamstrings injuries. He had a history of that, and that's probably had a little bit to do with his stock coming down. Plus, he was playing in the secondary. So, but the hard work that he's put in to develop into the player that he is today, I mean, it's impressive. I can't say enough good things about Matt Milano and what he means to our defense, but the hard work that he brings along with the demeanor that he has. You know, early on, he was kind of finding his way, you know, switching positions, becoming a linebacker. But you could see early on that was a quiet confidence about him. Not a loud talker, not a guy who's going to be out in front, but kind of like laying in the weeds. And when he gets this opportunity, you know, he's going to show you what he's capable of doing. So that demeanor with that heart that he has beneath that chest cavity, that it kind of speaks to who he is as a player. Just a really tough, smart, physical football player who's not going to say a whole lot, but his actions speaks louder than words in his case.
Great. And then the second thing was the nickel position. Obviously, it looks like, you know, Terran's your guy, but let's face it, he has had some injury issues. Where are you in the depth situation when you go to sub packages? What's your nickel situation looking like?
Yeah, we've got a couple guys that are working that position. Cam is working that position along with Saran Neal. He's getting some reps at that position. And we're trying to determine, and we will even have Dave Marlowe take some reps at that position. And, you know, Taryn has had some injuries for sure, like you mentioned. Hopefully this season he can play an entire season with no injuries. But we do have some backup contingencies if for some reason he gets banged up. And we've been practicing those other guys and giving them an opportunity. But Taryn has made it up to this point without any injuries. So hopefully we can finish camp with no injuries.
All right. Thanks, Leslie.
No problem.
Hey, Leslie, John Scott again. I'm going to wrap things up here. You mentioned Dean Marlowe, and he seems like someone who's really been standing out, and maybe he's an afterthought because of Jordan and Micah. What have you seen from him, and how can you utilize him and get him on the field, understanding that he's likely not ever going to see time over Jordan or Micah unless they get hurt?
Yeah, but that's not a bad thing, John, because in this league you need depth. You just never know when one of your starters may go down. So having quality depth is a big deal, and Dean provides that for us, that safety. And, you know, he does a good job on special teams as well, and that's a big part of our success as a team, how well we play on special teams. So even though he may not be a starter for us, understanding his role and maybe him not getting first-team reps, he's one of those guys who doesn't have to have a lot of practice reps to be ready to go in and play. So that's a luxury also. So he has value for us, and he's not a guy who's whining and complaining about I should be a starter, because he understands who our starters are and how good they are. And that matters as well, his attitude as a backup player. But he has a role, and he has accepted that role.
And finally, two guys that really flashed yesterday were Mike Love and Daryl Johnson. Where does the challenge of, obviously your defensive line is absolutely like almost 2.5 groups deep. What is the challenge in they're young guys that have promise, but trying to keep them on the roster, but understanding there's a lot of guys in front of them?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one for some of the guys that are in those backup roles that are fighting for spots when you're talented. There are only so many spots that you can keep, and, you know, when it comes to positions. And with our defensive line, you know, we have a finite number that we're going to stick to. And that means, you know, there may be a good player that's going to end up on someone else's roster. But the good thing for us is we have great competition along our defensive line, which hopefully will make us a better defensive line. And it's a luxury to have. And we'll see how it all plays out as we get closer to the cut down time.